Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Art of Podcast. I'm Bradley.
I'm Charles.
And today we are talking about virtue signaling, I guess. Kind of boycotting virtue signaling, in particular around, at the time of this being recorded, the new Harry Potter video game. Hogwarts Legacy that has come out, or is coming out, and there's a bunch of drama about it, and
people are boycotting it because JK Rowling has some political opinions
that people disagree with.
JK Rowling being the author of the Harry Potter books.
I don't think that goes without saying. I mean, so for some things here, the Harry Potter books are the third highest selling books of all time, behind the Bible and a mandatory English book that the Commonwealth had to use for decades or something like that.
Okay.
Or something like that.
Are you talking about the collective?
I don't know exactly. It's always been kind of weirdly worded. But the idea being, it is literally one of the best selling. It's stupidly well selling. I think she is worth over $1 billion. She is literally a billionaire.
Sure.
Probably the only author. Definitely the only author that's a billionaire, I would say.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's that. So we're going to go into it. So to kind of give a little plan of attack, I have some articles. We'll start with paraphrasing her political views through Wikipedia, and then we're going to go into some articles and their opinion pieces on the game and how the game should be handled. And we're going to kind of discuss whether there's some questions to it, right? Is can you appreciate the art in spite of the creator? Right? Okay. What hills do you want to die on? And stuff like that, right? And what are you willing to sacrifice to defend something? And we'll get into that because there's layers and layers to that. Okay. So first, I'll go to the Wikipedia article here for JK Rowling. There's a JK Rowling Wikipedia article that's just political views of JK Rowling. So, okay. I'm going to do some reading here. Where is it? Transgender rights. Rowling's response to proposed changes to UK gender recognition laws and her views on sex and gender have provoked controversy. Her statements have divided feminists, fueled debates on freedom of speech, academic freedom, and cancel culture, and prompted support for transgender people from the literary, arts, and culture sectors. Her statements have been deemed transphobic by critics, and she has been referred to as a TERF, which is a trans-exclusionary radical feminist.
Interesting.
In response to comments made initially on Twitter, she rejects these characterizations. As her views on the legal status of transgender people came under scrutiny, she received insults and death threats, and discussion moved beyond the Twitter community. Some performers and feminists have supported her. Rowling liked a tweet in 2018 calling transgender women men in dresses, which led to criticism and accusations of transphobia from her fans. Her spokesperson later told Pink News, "I'm afraid JK Rowling had a clumsy and middle-aged moment." Okay. This is not the first time she has favorited by holding her phone incorrectly. In December 2019, Rowling tweeted her support for Maya Forstater, who lost her employment with the Center of Global Development due to gender-critical views, and is the subject of Maya Forster v. Center, a United States court thing. On June 2020, Rowling criticized a Divex article's use of the phrase "people who menstruate." Let that sit in. Instead of the word woman. She tweeted, "If sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased," while also saying she was empathetic to trans people. The media advocacy group GLAAD called her tweets anti-trans and cruel. Several actors known for portraying Rowling's characters either criticized her views directly or spoke out in support of trans rights, including Emma Watson, Daniel Radcliffe, blah, blah, blah. Rowling responded to the criticism with an essay on her website. She wrote that many women consider terms like people who menstruate to be demeaning. She said she was concerned that girls were transitioning in order to escape womanhood, and said that trans activism was seeking to erode women as a political and biological class. She said she was a survivor of domestic abuse and sexual assault, and stated that when you throw open the doors of bathrooms and changing rooms to any man who believes or feels he's a woman, then you open the door to any and all men who wish to come inside, while stating that most trans people were vulnerable and deserve protection. Follow-up into who is at risk in women's toilets, Reuters stated that it was trans women who were more vulnerable, and that 200 municipalities which allow trans people to use women's shelters reported no rise in any violence as a result. And then there's a bunch more kind of going into that. In June 2020, the Equality Act was blocked by U.S. Senate Republican, and Rowling's essay, James Langford cited Rowling's essay as part of the reasoning for opposing the bill. So yeah, she's Or here, yeah. And then she wasn't included in a Harry Potter 20th anniversary thing. And people were thinking it was because of her views that HBO didn't include her. So she's definitely not completely pro-LGBT. But at the same time, I don't think she's saying anything super intense.
Well, so hearing that all to me seemed reasonable.
Yes.
Everything you said. And it's like, I'm not a hardcore conservative, but it's like, as a feminist,
yeah,
you could definitely agree with the idea that, like, changing the definition of a woman might impact everything that women have. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. That you read that to me and I was like, hey, this all seems incredibly reasonable.
Yeah.
And not too out there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And she's still facing all this controversy.
And now, that's the funny thing, okay? That is the only element of her political views that those people meaning the people that disagree with her,
of course,
disagree with. She was against Brexit. She is pro-abortion, especially in underdeveloped countries. Mm-hmm. She is in international politics. She's not. Sounds like she's against boycotting Israel, but disagrees with the current prime minister of Israel, and believes that there should be a way to improve the relations between Israel and Palestine. So, like, a fairly neutral, like, in a lot of ways, she agrees with these people that are throwing so much shade at her, right? But it's just this
people
one
just
thing.
Want to stick to the controversy. Right?
Yeah. So, anyways, this Hogwarts game came into development 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. Yeah. Probably 8 years ago, development cycle, before all this drama came out, in like 2020 and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then this drama comes out, and now everyone hates the game and thinks she should be boycotted.
Not everyone. A group.
Everyone being the general games media, seemingly.
No,
GameSpot refuses to put up a review.
What?
As of now. Yeah, Game Informer hasn't put up a review.
Have they stated it's because of JK Rowling?
Several of them have. I don't know which ones have or not, but several of them have said they refuse to review the game and give it attention. But that is literally the Streisand effect. You're giving it more attention by making a point of not giving it attention, right? You know what I mean?
The funniest thing is, I guarantee every single employee of Game Informer or GameStop, they're all going to be playing the game. I fucking guarantee it. It's just, you just have to make, I guess that's now, that has to do with our topic of virtue signaling. Like, the company feels like it has to make a public statement about a political stance, saying, "Oh, we're not going to give this game attention," even though
they wrote 100 news articles,
and
all of their news articles talking about the game and how they aren't going to review it. It's you're giving it more special attention, not reviewing it, than you would if you just reviewed it like a normal game.
That's crazy.
But yeah, so a lot of huge companies aren't reviewing it. I was listening to another podcast talking about it, and the podcast couldn't go 2 sentences without saying, F JK Rowling. She is the
Which
worst.
podcast was that?
Kind of funny. Their games podcast. Yeah. And they couldn't go 2 seconds.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
They couldn't go 2 seconds without saying, screw her. She is the worst. You are on the wrong side of history. Like, she's on the wrong side. There's no opinion. It is factually wrong. Like, they are saying these things, right? So then another article here is Hogwarts Legacy preview on Gameshub. The right game at the wrong time. No, that's not the right one. It is, one sec. Here, sorry. Hogwarts Legacy does not deserve to be reviewed on its own merits. That's the title of this article, which is starting off strong. To judge a creation purely on its own merits is often lauded as a fair and positive method of review. Why should a bad game be praised just because it comes from a normally brilliant creator? Why should a good one be vilified just because the mind that inspired it is ignorant or hateful? If something is good, we should be able to enjoy it and endorse it, even if we acknowledge the faults of the progenitor. Perhaps even more so when a creation takes steps to distance itself from those now tainted roots, and often support to the people who are wronged. An objective stance would be only fair, don't you think? Next paragraph. I bet it would feel nice to be fair, quote unquote, to judge Hogwarts Legacy by its merits alone, to look at the strides the developers made to offer inclusivity, and distance themselves from hatred, to acknowledge that they aren't to blame, and just enjoy a franchise that once held such important meaning to me. It would be easier to be fair, believe me, to turn away from the discourse, ignore the context and consequences, and just explore something I used to love. What a privilege to spend a few dollars and play a game in one of the most formative worlds of my childhood, choosing not to think about where that money goes. I want to make it clear to you right now that as a transgender individual, I have no interest in that kind of fairness or objectivity when coming to Hogwarts Legacy. I have a moral imperative to oppose this game. And then it goes on, Hogwarts Legacy cannot and should not be judged solely on its own merits, because the end result of supporting this game financially and socially isn't simply a matter of how you enjoy it, or how nostalgic it might be to experience the world of Harry Potter. If you purchase this game, if you praise its qualities and encourage others to support the developers, or treat yourself to a guilty pleasure, both of those statements in quotes, you are making a choice that will harm the transgender community, whether you want to admit it or not. The statements might seem like a stretch at first glance, but for the sake of clarity, let's break it down. If you buy Hogwarts Legacy, you are doing 3 significant things. 1, you're directly supporting the royalty checks of JK Rowling, what she'll receive as the IP owner. 2, you're financially signaling to the wider market that the Harry Potter IP is a profitable space. 3, you're socially engaging with the IP and potentially broadening its audience, encouraging others to engage with it as well. This inevitably leads to more people being exposed to Rowling's hateful beliefs. Gameshub has already detailed some samples, that's some editorial stuff about how they have samples of the bad things she believes in. Buying Hogwarts Legacy gives Rowling financial support and risks broadening her audience. These actions are both harmful towards the transgender community. Economic influence is very real and growing ever more overt in the video game industry. Think of how many microtransactions we're seeing stuffed into games, or NFTs, blah, blah. The money you spend has your impact. Your actions have consequences. You buy Hogwarts Legacy, you provide support that harms the transgender community. And then she actually talks about the game and how it's actually a good game. And then...
So this reviewer has played the game and she doesn't like it.
Yeah. Now there's 2 more paragraphs to end it.
Okay.
Does buying Hogwarts Legacy make you a transphobe? Is one bad action enough to make you a bad person? After all, 1 bucket of sand doesn't make a beach, and 1 tree doesn't make a forest. But if you buy this game, you're making a choice. You're choosing to support JK Rowling, even if it's just in a small way. And if you knowingly weigh the costs and decide that your personal enjoyment of a video game is worth supporting a trans, exclusionary, radical feminist, that indulging your nostalgia is more valuable than supporting the transgender community, well, in that case, 1 tree might not make a forest, but it sure is more than none. So she seems to be I don't even know who the author is. Sorry.
I love how
what was that acronym? The radical
TERF.
Yeah. I love how they throw the word radical in there.
Yeah.
I think that's so brilliantly ironic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
yeah.
That article seems to me to be infinitely more radical than what we read about J.K. Rowling's political views.
Totally. This article literally implying, well, 1 tree might not make a forest, but it's sure more than none, is implying that if you buy the game, you are a transphobe.
Yeah.
That is what that is saying as a statement, right? Because does buying Hogwarts Legacy make you a transphobe? After all, 1 bucket of sand doesn't make a beach, and 1 tree doesn't make a forest, a rhetorical statement. Well, 1 tree might not make a forest, but it sure is more than none. Are you trying to make a claim that buying the game makes you a transphobe?
I don't know. I don't know. That's,
yeah. And then there's other criticisms that takes place during the Goblin Rebellion or whatever, which they think has comparisons to anti-Semitic views, and that the game shouldn't take place during then, and people are saying that you shouldn't buy the game at all because you're supporting JK Rowling. We just said JK Rowling is worth $1 billion. Mm-hmm. She doesn't care about the royalty check anymore.
Right.
But do you know who does?
Well,
the hundreds of developers that made the game and rely on that income to support their family. And those developers that started working on that game before Rowling's opinions came to public.
Right.
So that's sort of the conversation here, right? Is like, what are you willing to pay? And not even you, but what are you willing to make others pay to prove your point? Mm-hmm. If you firmly believe this game should be boycotted for JK Rowling, you are in equal breath admitting that you are willing to harm hundreds of developers.
Yeah. I think we should make a distinction between like people who people who want to boycott the game and people who just simply don't want to buy it.
Yeah.
Because I think the latter, although I disagree with the latter,
they have the freedom to do that.
Right?
You have the freedom to boycott it. It's just the principle of the boycott, right? Like,
yeah.
The public, like, if you don't want to buy it because it offends you, you have the right to do that, and I don't care at all. Mm-hmm. But if you're making these opinion pieces calling people, trying to imply people are transphobes for buying the game, and that buying the game is supporting Rowling, and therefore no one should buy or review the game, you're making that claim because you think JK Rowling is directly negatively affecting the trans community, even though it's not directly. It's indirectly affecting the trans community. But do you know what you're directly affecting? The lives of the hundreds of developers that need that game to do well.
That article you just read was so weird because the first paragraph, I heard that and I was like, oh, this sounds pretty reasonable. I was kind of confused. Right, like the author was basically saying that, like,
should you judge him?
Like it seemed like the author was saying like games should be judged on their merit. You should be able to enjoy a game and not.
Then that statement,
right?
I have to oppose this. I need
right.
to.
Well, it's almost as if like I don't think the author is completely full of shit. It's almost as if like the first paragraph they're kind of emphasizing the idea that their opinion to not support the game is to some extent not completely rational, but they're making a choice to be irrational for their own, for personal reasons or whatever. I don't know, man. When you read that first paragraph, I was like, I wonder where this is going to go. It's almost as if the author was acknowledging how kind of unreasonable their following opinions were going to be.
Yeah.
But I guess because they're trans, they feel the need to still stick to those opinions anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think that article was full of shit completely.
No, it's not even the author. It's what that being literally the message of half of the game's media.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because, and here's the thing too, is JK Rowling has that public opinion. You only don't like it because it's public. How many people are you buying games for that aren't in a powerful position of JK Rowling that probably have similar beliefs?
Yeah.
Right?
Like, for sure.
Hundreds, like maybe not hundreds, but several. Dozens of high-profile creators.
Think about The Witcher. The Witcher is made in Poland. Poland is one of the most
Eastern
conservative
Europe,
countries
like
in
Orthodox,
Europe.
Right?
Yeah. I think it's safe to say more than half the people who worked on The Witcher are probably anti-abortion, anti-gay. Yeah. Right? It's like, but it's still an endlessly praised game because it's not this big public controversy.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, it's so...
Well, okay, so, that kind of brings up the question, too. It's like, the hill you want to die on. Because this kind of is a bit of a stretch, but you got to come around and kind of understand. Mm-hmm. I don't have the best examples for it. You say that you need to support the trans community by not buying this game because a little bit of money, literally pennies on the dollar, is going to go to a billionaire.
Yeah.
And she's like vocally against these things. Therefore, I can't support her. But you go and you buy your Nike shoes created in sweatshops in China from people that are 14 years old that are work 13-hour days making dollars an hour. Mm-hmm. You go and you buy your engagement ring, blood diamond, right? Like from literal like people getting murdered for these diamonds and stuff, right? Like you do all these things that you it's because you don't think about the negative connotation. The negative connotation's overseas. Mm-hmm. It's not your neighbor.
Yeah.
Right? And like I would make the argument that Nike having I'm just saying Nike, but Nike sweatshops in China or whatever, that is more directly impactfully negative to a geographic area than some rich person's opinions.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just a culture war, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. People are just looking for reasons to get mad. And I think it's a lot easier to get mad at JK Rowling than it is to get mad at Nike because
she's a person, right?
Yeah. And you probably wear Nike shoes, so that would be really inconvenient.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Is it inconvenient for you? Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, but I think it's a little ridiculous, the hypocrisy of you're willing to hurt people that actually put blood, sweat, and tears into the game.
Yeah.
To defend your views and protect your views, right? And it's that. Yeah, I don't know. And the binary they're making it. It's the right and the wrong side. It's not your opinion.
Well, what did you say?
what did you say? Kind of funny.
They're saying like you're on the wrong side, right? Like
yeah. So it's they're acting like this is they're acting like we're in the realm of facts here.
Yeah.
Like they're acting like your social views about transgender people are in the realm of facts, and you can either be factually right or factually wrong.
And denying discussion on it.
Well, we're talking about politics. These are opinions.
Yeah.
Like it's not a fact that trans people deserve rights. It's an opinion. Right? Yeah. Like, I think that. I think trans people deserve rights.
You can make the fact that the person deserves rights, right? Like, there's maybe a fact that the person deserves rights, but what those rights are is the opinion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's... And also naming it as facts and trying to say they're facts seems like a hollow excuse to be able to avoid discussion and to avoid being challenged by it, right? Like, imagine if one of us tried sitting down with one of these people, throwing down the facts, quote unquote, of it, right? They wouldn't listen to you.
Yeah.
Because you're wrong.
Right.
You're a villain. Yeah.
Well, people can pick and choose facts, right? Like I could pick plenty of quote facts that could support, like for example, so Jordan Peterson brings this up a lot. So there's a trans surgery clinic in the UK that that recently closed down because they're being sued by over 1,000 people who argued that they were I think most of the plaintiffs are like kids who argued that they were rushed into like transgender surgeries way too quickly, so now they're suing this clinic, and the clinic had to shut down because they have so many lawsuits against them. You can throw that as like a fact and be like, well, maybe JK Rowling has a point about there was one opinion that I heard about her saying something like trans kids maybe shouldn't be too rushed.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So I can give you that as a fact, right? Are you going to pay attention to that? Are you going to acknowledge it? No. You're going to
doesn't fit your
ignore
agenda.
it.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But it's that lack of conversation too, right? Like, to throw kind of funny under the bus, they said the same thing about abortions. You're on the wrong side. The people that want some sort of abortion law are on the wrong side. And my problem about that is no one can claim that there's a wrong side to it. Like, there are so many layers. That is such a complex issue, more so than the trans thing, right? There are, like, pretty much it comes down to, do you value the life of the unborn baby more or less than the life of the woman? And that's what it comes down to. But there are two sides to it.
Right.
To deny the existence of the other side's opinion and to deny any validity to it is to remove any capability of learning or moving on.
I feel like what would really put things into perspective is that if these really progressive people who have these opinions
had to move out of California.
Conservatives are wrong. I think what would be an interesting perspective is if they, pick a statement like trans people deserve rights. That's a fact, right? Take a statement like that, but then kind of flip it around as if it were said by someone who is conservative. Imagine someone saying gay people don't deserve rights. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Right? If you heard that as a progressive, you'd be like, no, you're wrong.
But it's equally empty vapid.
Well, they're both in the realm of opinion. They both have nothing to do with facts.
Yeah.
Right? Yet if you hear the supposed fact coming from the other side, I think it's so hypocritical, right?
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? That's the thing I think you're seeing more and more. It's this Hogwarts thing. It's the abortion. It's the hypocrisy of them saying, you are on the wrong side. You are in the wrong. You need to love everybody. But then they say, literally in the next statement, JK Rowling is the bleeping worst bleeping human of all time.
Yeah.
Right? Death threats. I read that.
Definitely.
She was getting death threats.
Yeah.
She's speaking out that she disagrees about something and gets death threats in return. How, like... Man, and people make the claim that people that have these opinions are the Nazis. It's like, no, do you know what's actually close to being a Nazi? Silencing people for disagreeing with you.
Right.
That's what's close to fascism. That is the closest thing we have to fascism in North America.
There we go.
It is people trying to publicly shame you and silence you from speaking out against what you believe in.
Yeah.
The crazy thing too is when you were reading about JK Rowling's essay that she released, she seemed to me to come off as like relatively empathetic towards trans people. Like she was adding sort of these caveats here and there of like, you know, I do empathize with trans people. I do think they deserve rights, but these are my opinions.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I really don't think that's all that bad, and people have made such a big deal about this.
Yeah. Totally. Like I couldn't imagine if I was a public figure what they would think of. And not that my views are super radical. Like probably like fairly similar, maybe slightly more right based on what I've read there, but fairly similar to JK Rowling's. Right? Sure. Just like in the same ballpark anyway. I'm not going too much, but like, man, if they knew what I thought, right? Like, it's just I don't know. It's hypocritical, like you said. Yeah. Do you think to kind of turn it around then? What do you think the value is of boycotting someone at the expense of hundreds of creators potentially? You know what I mean?
What the value is?
What's your value in that? Like, do you see a value in that, or do you think that kind of is a hypocritical thing too?
I don't know. I think it's complicated because it is a good point that like, you know, there are hundreds of people who have worked on this game who
are more directly involved too, right?
Well, who need the income from game sales to live, right? Yeah. It's, I don't know. I mean, you obviously as a consumer, you have the right to do whatever you want, and if you want to say I'm not going to buy this game to support JK Rowling, I think that's totally fine. Yeah. But if we're talking about a mass scale boycott, where let's say maybe you're trying to prevent the game from being sold by EB Games or whatever,
like protests or large opinion pieces calling out people for being transphobic,
right? I don't know, man. I mean, it's obviously a political issue that people are passionate about, and that's fine. And if you think that this, I definitely disagree with it, but if you think it's somehow bad enough to deserve a boycott, like, you're allowed to have that opinion.
Yeah. So I guess in their defense, are you familiar with the band Lost Prophets?
No.
They're like a rock band, and the singer ended up being proven guilty of like sexual stuff with children or something like that, right?
Okay.
So I don't want to buy their music and support them now because that's deplorable.
Sure.
But to put it on a slightly smaller scale, it's like, well, now you're damaging the other bandmates. Now you're damaging everyone else, right?
But this happened with Headley. Do you know Headley?
Yeah. Same thing?
Jacob Hoggard was convicted of having sex with
literally the exact same thing.
The exact same thing. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, do I think that's deplorable? Yeah. I've hearing some of the stories about Jacob Hoggard that have now come out, like radio hosts, literally, I think it was 98.5, like Vibe Radio in Calgary.
Yeah,
I think one of the female hosts was talking about how she met Jacob Hoggard, and he was like really creepy and touchy towards her. Yeah. Right? So all these allegations have come out, and it's deplorable. Does that make Jacob Hoggard a bad singer? No. I still love Headley's music. I listen to them all the time. Yeah. And I'm obviously aware of all the controversy, and if I'm downloading their shit on Spotify, then I'm supporting them. Yeah. But like, I mean, if I choose to have that be such an important thing to me that I don't support, that I won't buy Headley's music, then fine. But if I choose the opposite and I say this is deplorable, but it's not enough for me to stop listening to Headley, I don't think that's bad. I think you keep listening.
No. Yeah. I'm just saying, in the case of Lost Prophets, like, I don't want to buy their stuff.
Yeah, no, I know. Right? I was just making the point, right?
But I don't think that's the same as JK Rowling. I think the equivalent for this would be if the owner of the record label was charged for things. Then do you support the bands under the record label? You know what I'm saying? Because JK Rowling didn't make the game. She was not involved in making the game. She owns the IP. She gets royalty checks. Yeah. So that would be comparable to you saying you're not going to support a band because the owner of their record label has done something wrong. Yeah. And I think that seems like a bit of a stretch on, you're hurting people directly that rely on this 100%. Right. Just to get at that owner who's probably really rich and doesn't really care about that one band's record sales, right? Like, they care a lot more about like the larger marketing of it, all that stuff, right?
I guess a good example of that is the whole like Scooter Braun Taylor Swift thing, right? Like Taylor Swift. Did you hear about this? Yeah. Yeah. So Taylor Swift's, Scooter Braun is some producer or something. He owns.
Yeah, I can't remember if it's music videos or the albums, but
anyway, so it's like if you're gonna boycott Scooter Braun, that now affects Taylor Swift.
Does that mean you're not buying Taylor Swift's albums because of her producer?
Because of Scooter Braun.
That seems like a bit of a step removed.
That definitely puts things into perspective, because that definitely seems unreasonable, right? Because it's like you want to support. I don't know. It's,
the direct creator, right?
It's not an apples to apples comparison.
No, but it seems to be the direct creator opposed to somebody who's siphoning a level of like royalty off of it, right? Like the direct creator of the game opposed to the person whose existence allowed them to create the game, right? Like Taylor Swift's music, or the person's whose existence allowed her to create that music, right? The record label owner, this hypothetical record label owner and stuff, right? Like I don't know. It's just. I don't think it's as easy as saying you're dumb if you buy Hogwarts.
Right.
I'm not saying any particular person is saying that directly, but like you can't say it's great. You're impacting people, and there's layers to it. In Kind of Funny's defense, they have said that. They have said it's to support them. Kind of Funny has said it's they're conflicted because they don't know whether how to consider that, right?
Sure. Yeah. Another big thing too, we can get into this. I think it's the whole freedom of speech issue.
Yeah.
Right. Like so. What people are mad about essentially is that JK Rowling voiced her opinion.
Yeah.
Right, which is a fundamental part of freedom of speech, and people are upset about it.
Yeah.
That article that you read me that was written by that trans journalist. The fact that they could write this article and then publish it, that's a manifestation of freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Right.
You
publicly supporting the transgender community in such a public way. That's a form of freedom of speech. It's exactly what JK Rowling is doing.
Yeah.
Right? You're both voicing your opinions, and you're both allowed to.
Yeah.
Because you live under a system that prioritizes freedom of speech. Yet the former is criticizing the latter for exercising their freedom of speech rights. It's almost as if I feel like people criticize freedom of speech if they're benefiting from it, and that benefit is at no risk of being taken away.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, we live in a pretty progressive society. You voicing your opinions on trans people isn't going to get you in any trouble. Yeah. Right? So you're not at any risk of having your freedom of speech be taken away from you, because you would be upset. Right? If you published that article supporting trans people and it was taken down, if you were actively censored, you would be really upset because your freedom of speech is actively being taken away from you.
Yeah.
Yet, because it's not under threat of being taken away from you, you're kind of ignoring the benefit of freedom of speech that you're
it doesn't
right?
you don't feel the right of it, right? Like you feel that it's not freedom of speech because it's something so accepted. It's no longer even a right. It's just normal. It's the normal, right?
Which just makes it even more.
And to be clear, I'm not against this person. All the power to them for not wanting to buy the game. This is an example of the general trend. Yeah.
That article didn't seem too radical to me. There were some parts that were like, well, I don't agree with that for sure, but as a general
I was just using that as the one I found that seemed to kind of voice the general idea of like, you shouldn't be buying this game because you are supporting JK Rowling, which is something I do disagree with. I think the other thing too is you were saying it's a freedom of speech thing, and it is, but I also think it's also how direct and harmful the words are being said. JK Rowling has voiced opinions of a general group of people that aren't even directly hating of him from what I'm aware of. It's just that she has issues with. Right? Like you said, that essay seemed not radical.
That's tricky, man, because you're not trans, right? So like I have absolutely no idea.
I did say seems, right? Like
to me it seems perfectly reasonable that if you are trans and let's say you were a really big Harry Potter fan, you might really be upset by what JK Rowling
I know, and that's what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that you're not doing any better in return for directly firing insults at JK Rowling, a person, which I think is much more aggravated, and that's an escalation.
Yeah.
Right? If I say Bradley, I'm going to say something super dumb because no one can be upset. I think men are all slobs, and we all like drool over women too much or whatever.
Yeah.
We all sexualize women too much. Whatever my opinion is, it's like men can be kind of offended by that, sure, but that's a lot less offensive than if I say, Charles, you are this, right?
Yeah.
Like that is the broader statement is much less offensive, right? It's like if she has these broad statements about the trans community and their response is to lob direct insults at her, calling her an idiot, calling her like swears and slurs.
It's
and
immature. It's definitely
it's immature, and it is an escalation. I think of it's that I need to do worse damage kind of thing,
Right.
But I think the other issue you encounter is what's the term for it? That you'll say much meaner things on the internet when you're hiding behind anonymity.
Yeah.
Anonymity, right?
Yeah.
And these people, sure, their names on the article, but they have proven there's something. If you're not directly saying it to their face, even if people know your name, they don't know you.
Of course.
So you can say all sorts of things, right? Because and the other side of that, JK Rowling feels bigger than life. She's a big billionaire. She doesn't feel like she's a person in the same way. Like you sort of forget that they're human and have emotions and feelings and opinions.
Dude, literally, I was watching do you know Jubilee?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah.
So they do these videos of they talk about like a controversial political topic, and then I have two groups of people on each side, and they come in and talk to each other. There was one about it was about feminists. It was about female pro and anti-feminists, and JK Rowling came up, and one of the pro feminists was like, she's a billionaire. I don't care if I hurt her billionaire feelings. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
It's like, does money just make you immune to human emotions?
Yeah.
It's like people have become so salty.
Yeah.
Totally. Of success and wealth and fame, even though JK Rowling, in my honest opinion, deserves the money that she's made because she's created
probably one of the 3 most successful IPs of all time.
Well,
right?
literally,
maybe
according
4.
to right? Like she definitely deserves the money, man. And it's it's not like she's profiting off exploiting people. It's like people just bought her fucking books, and that's why she's rich.
She's not profiting off of her views. That's the other thing too, right? Her views aren't how she became rich. That's the other thing too, right? But it's 2 things, right? It's the anonymity of posting on the internet makes you more brazen, and it's the billionaire doesn't have feelings and isn't human. And those 2 things together make people have a much easier time lobbing insults online at JK Rowling.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that's the hard part. That's, I think, the frustrating part, right? It's like, do you know how much people would hate her if she started calling out some of these columnists and editorials and started calling them out by name and saying, screw you, you're the worst? Do you know how much hate she would get for that?
She's the bigger person for not doing that.
Yeah,
she seemed to stay she stuck to her opinion. She stuck to her opinion, which I think is admirable, and she seemed to stay not out of the conflict, obviously, but she seemed to remain level-headed at the very least, and not get too upset and write all these hot-headed articles or tweets.
It's an essay, which by definition takes meditation and stuff to write because it's so long, right? She's not tweeting back immediately, right?
Yeah.
But do you know how much hate she would probably have an attempt on her life if she started lobbing those exact same insults back at those people.
For sure.
But they're okay. But they think it's okay for them to say those things.
Yeah.
Right, and it's
hypocrisy,
right?
Yeah.
And if you bring up that you respect that she kind of stuck with her opinion and kind of stayed away from direct things,
because especially now, so many people don't, right? So many people state their opinion, feel the fucking wrath of Twitter, and then they apologize 3 days later.
Yeah. Or they start nitpicking back and calling names back.
Yeah.
Right? So
either or, right?
But that also reminds me of when Horizon Zero Dawn, another video game, came out, and people they got backlash for using the word brave.
Why?
Because it's cultural appropriation to First Nations. Because that's a term they use for their warriors or whatever, right? I don't even want to misspeak and get in trouble too. But they use that for the warriors or whatever. So it's cultural appropriation it's racist for them to use a First Nations term because it's implying that they're like savage, I don't know, whatever, right? Like whatever the problem was with it, something like that. There was same thing. There was opinion pieces.
Yeah, this rings a bell.
And Guerrilla Games, and people were trying to there was like petitions to have Guerrilla Games put an update in to remove all uses of Brave, and replace it with something else. And Guerrilla Games just said, no, we're not going to do that. But they had more of a detailed. Their response was they thought it was an honor. They thought it was a good term to use. They thought that was better than using savages and primitives, right? Like Brave is a good thing. It has a positive connotation. Why wouldn't you want that term used? What term would you recommend that you should use instead of a positive one? Yeah. So that was Guerrilla Games' opinion. They were like, we did the best we could to kind of like stay away from using anything that we considered racist or considered like offensive. Mm-hmm. And so, like, we're sorry we offended you, but we're not changing anything. Right. And that was their... I'm definitely paraphrasing exactly, but it was a very reasonable, we respect that, but no, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we're not going to. And I'm so happy they did that, right?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
You have my money now, Guerrilla Games. I'll buy the next game for you. Like, something that isn't, I don't think, offensive. Like, I don't think the term Brave is offensive.
Yeah,
Once again, we're not that, right?
We're not First Nations.
Well, that brings up the other issue of a lot of the time people lobbying these grievances aren't the people that are in the group, right?
Yeah.
Like sure, this person was trans in this one article, but outside of that article, there was a lot more non-trans people saying you shouldn't be buying.
There's a big discussion here around like how like white guilt has kind of consumed our society. Yeah. And we've made the assumption that white people have to feel guilty for every single action that could possibly be conceived.
This is virtue signaling now, right? Yeah, this is virtue signaling the conversation now, right? Yeah. You feel guilty for all your ancestors' transgressions, right? Right. Have you heard recently that the mayor of San Francisco is looking into giving every long-term black resident in San Francisco like $3 million or something like that?
What? I don't believe that.
No, find it. Okay, you talk for a minute.
I don't even know what to say.
Virtue signaling white people. We're always the ones responding.
Okay, what's the definition of virtue signaling?
Yeah, read that.
The public expression of opinions or sentiments intended to demonstrate one's good character or social conscience.
Here, okay. CNN. Sorry, I got the article. Mm-hmm. San Francisco Reparations Committee proposes a $5 million payment to each black resident.
So that's just some stupid committee. That's not anything fucking...
Sure, let's see. Yeah, sure. Yeah. But a committee in San Francisco has released an extensive proposal for repatriations that includes a one-time payment of $5 million for each eligible black resident. And I forget the exact terms might be in here, but it was like if you've lived here for more than 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. The San Francisco African American Reparations Advisory Committee, created in 2020 under the city's Human Rights Commission. So it's it's not just a random like nonprofit that exists. It was created by an institution a city institution.
Yeah.
So it's like a level more serious than just some random like house committee, right? Sure. Was tasked to develop a plan to address the institutional city-sanctioned harm that has been inflicted upon African American communities. The committee has no authority to implement its recommendations. Okay, so then it goes on to say, but just the same idea. It's just like, I don't know. Like in my mind, it's like, it seems kind of like virtue signaling. It's like, oh, look, we're the most considerate city. We're the most progressive city, right? I don't know, but yeah. Do you think that's an issue though? Do you think that white people are trying to be forced then to feel bad, I guess, or make amends for, like, how would you word it? I forget how you worded it exactly. But are you saying you agree with that? Like that's something that exists?
No, it exists. I don't agree with the concept.
No, sorry, that's not me. You agree with you're proposing that exists, and you think it shouldn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Well, yeah, it's just the culture war generally seems to be so fundamentally tied to the idea of white guilt. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know, it's complicated. But
yeah, and it seems to be, like I said, a lot of these people supporting these or against these things are white men, white straight men.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if it's because they feel guilty themselves, they're feel like they're obligated to because who knows what the reason is for each and every one of them, but like that's kind of the funny thing is a lot of the people who are speaking out against Braves and Horizon were probably just white and thought that First Nations people would appreciate them doing that.
Yeah, and then you gotta wonder what, of all the First Nations that ended up playing the game, you kind of gotta wonder what percentage of them would truly be offended by the term brave. Yeah. And if the percentage is negligible or maybe even zero, like, doesn't it make you kind of a freaking idiot for making such a big deal about it?
I would even say if it was upwards of 10%.
Like, so I have Colin.
Yeah.
So our friend, we are on a podcast. Our friend, he's...
yeah.
I love you, Colin. He's very progressive, right? And he's Asian. And one conversation that him and I had one time, he said, so although he's very, very progressive, he kind of hates the culture war, and he hates it because he is a minority, and he hates how white people insist on arguing on his behalf. He says that is like it's his biggest axe to grind with this whole culture war thing.
He's used the term like oppression Olympics, and he was the first person I heard that term from, and I'm like, that's great.
Makes a lot of sense.
Everyone competing to be the most pitied person,
right?
Or the most pitied, or make someone the most pitied person in a supposed effort to support them, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know where all these people are that are this culture war thing. I don't think I personally know anyone that's that far on the like hate JK Rowling, remove Brave from all this, like all across the board. I don't personally know anyone, so I don't know where they all are. But clearly, there's a lot of them.
That's really tough because I went to school at Dalhousie in Halifax, which was an incredibly progressive university. Like, it was so... I would get notes under my door from RAs telling me what racism was. And,
actually?
And it was like the most politically charged, unobjective view of racism you could possibly put on a piece of paper. Like, literally slid under my door by my RA. And this was like a mandated thing that they had to do for like such an unbelievably progressive university. And like, I knew lots of people there who were obviously very progressive, and I didn't not like any of them because it's one of those things where like, when you're talking to someone, it's definitely in the air that you really disagree with each other politically, but you make an effort to kind of avoid the topic and still be civilized toward each other. And so I definitely know people who I don't know for sure, but they definitely could be on the side of let's boycott JK Rowling.
Yeah.
I still like them because they're still good people and because we haven't really talked politics all that much.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know their opinions precisely, but I don't know.
Like, if you even want to curse her name in private between you and some friends, I would think that's one thing.
Yeah.
But then having the thought of, like, I need to make this public on Twitter, or I need to make a YouTube video about this, I'm like, well, that seems a step further, right? Like,
I mean, again, it's a freedom of speech. Like, you're perfectly entitled to do it.
But I understand the mindset of saying it in private. I don't understand the mindset of wanting to make it public, that like to publicly lambast and lob insults at somebody, right? Like, I don't know, like,
vindictive behavior like that for sure. If you're,
but you see that though.
Yeah,
you see a lot of
it.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
I just think I think games media is an interesting place. You'll see like I don't listen to Kind of Funny anymore. I just listen to them because of this idea that this would be an interesting thing from. But I do listen once in a while to like Colin Moriarty, who the guy that left Kind of Funny.
Yeah.
And like he'll try to message somebody, or somebody will say, "Oh, did you see this tweet from media personality number 18 kind of thing, right?"
Yeah.
And he'll be like, "Oh no," and he goes to look at it and he finds out he's blocked from by this person, and he's never talked to this person in his life. And it's because people just say that he's just this racist person, like, or whatever, right? Like, he is just the worst human being, and he's like, I'm engaged to a black woman. But that's, I don't know, just games media seems like this weird, if you're not for us, you're against us mentality, right? And
for sure.
I just find it's a wild echo chamber that seems, just, I don't know, radical.
You really gotta wonder too, like how many, like if we're talking like IGN, like hundreds if not thousands of people work for IGN, you really gotta wonder how many of them are actually that radical. Like is it just like, because it's always like the most radical voices are the loudest, right? And I think often when we talk about the culture war, we kind of, people paint most progressives as if they're part of this radical group. But in reality, it's probably the opposite. And it's probably a very small minority of people who actually think these things. And the rest of the people on the progressive end are like, well, I don't agree with what JK Rowling says, but I'm not intolerant enough to boycott this video game.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta wonder, man.
Yeah, I have a couple more things that's kind of brought up. I have to go to the bathroom real quick, though, so can you pause it? And I gotta find something, too. Okay, we're back?
We're back.
Okay. So I wanted to look up quickly. Do you remember hearing about Richard Spencer? It's like,
no.
He was a bit of, I think he was some level of like a white supremacist in like 2017. And there's a video of somebody coming up and punching him in public.
Okay.
And that video got applauded. That guy did right. Punching a man in the face.
Yeah.
Right? And that's sort of the mentality here too, right? I think the issue is some group, whether it's the progressive side or whatever, in this case the progressive side, they villainize someone to the point where they are no longer human. Right? And then it's like, you just said it's okay to punch somebody if they say something mean.
Yeah.
You're literally saying it's okay to punch somebody if they disagree with you. And it's like,
yeah, I mean, I'd like to know what this guy said.
He was doing a public speech at a university that he was paid to do.
The university brought him there.
Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it exactly. It's at least a very close story to that. Yeah, so Spencer was credited with the term alt-right, with coining the term alt-right. Described himself as an identitarian. He was punched in the head on Inauguration Day of Trump, I guess, by a person clad in black as he was being interviewed by a journalist. At the time of the attack, Mr. Spencer was explaining the meaning of Pepe the Frog, a cartoon figure adopted as a mascot by the alt-right, a racist, far-right fringe movement that is anti-immigrant, anti-Semitic, and anti-feminist. Video of the attack shows Mr. Spencer reeling to one side under the force of the blow, and his attacker darting through the crowd after landing the punch. A bystander who chased the attacker later posted a YouTube video of his encounter with the man. The assailant can be heard telling a friend of the man filming them that he is mad because I hit Richard Spencer. The bystander who made the video does not appear to be a supporter of Mr. Spencer, and despairingly refers to the activist in the clip as a neo-Nazi. So that's kind of all. He was being interviewed at like university or something like that, and a guy just literally runs up and decks him in the face.
Yeah.
Like, we were talking about free speech. It's like, could he say something really deplorable and he probably deserves to be punched in an offhanded term, in an offhanded way? Sure, but like, can he actually say something? Here's the question then. Can you actually say something so offensive that it's okay if somebody comes up and punches you in the head in public?
Not an opinion. Not an opinion, man.
No.
Like if that's
what I'm saying. Yeah.
If you actively call for people to be like,
to kill somebody or something.
Yeah,
right?
like sure, maybe then you can get punched in the face. But if you're just stating a political opinion, like absolutely not.
He was being interviewed by a journalist, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But everyone was praising the guy who punched him. It's like,
yeah, of course.
If you think that's okay, what's the next line? Is it okay to punch somebody that's just right, like pro-life?
Well, then think about the line. Think about the line going the other way. It's like, is it okay for someone to punch you for voicing your opinions?
Yeah,
you're obviously not going to say yes to that.
No, yeah, totally.
Right. So it's again, we're at this hypocrisy here, where it's. Yeah. I understand that sometimes it's hard to not be a hypocrite, especially if you're talking politics, because it's political opinions.
You and me have had podcasts, I think, where we both jokingly commented, "You're being a hypocrite now."
For sure. But I feel like people just like they either bask
in being hypocrites, or they're so blind to it. Like, so unbelievably, stupidly blind to how hypocritical they're being.
Yeah.
And if the shoe was on the other foot, they would be really upset.
Totally.
Right?
Which is another hypocritical thing to do, right? Like, it's just, I don't know. I think it's kind of comes into, like, the Streisand effect again, right? Like, are you familiar with the Streisand effect? Do you want to Google it really quick and just read out the definition, or I can Google it? Yeah.
You're faster than I am.
Am I? Okay. Everything we've been talking about, I think, kind of fits this. The Streisand effect is the way in which attempts to hide, remove, or censor information can lead to the unintended consequence of increasing awareness of that information.
Yeah.
Like Hogwarts Legacy, making a big deal about not reviewing the game. It's bringing more attention to the game than just reviewing it and keeping your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Right? That's how you could have got at JK Rowling the most if you disagree with her and hate her. Just review the game and give it a bad score and don't say anything. Yeah. That would be the most damage you could do. But not too bad of a score, because that'll bring attention to it too, right? Like, you have to give it like a 6.5 out of 10. Same as Richard Spencer. Do you know what would have silenced him? Just letting him speak and not showing up. Don't show up. Just let him speak in an empty room. That would silence him. Right. Not punching him in public and giving worldwide attention
all over
to
the
it.
internet. Yeah, exactly.
So, and people that wouldn't have cared, I would have never heard of that man if it wasn't for that punch. Me personally,
for sure.
I would have never heard of him if it wasn't for that article about him being punched in the head. Listen to a podcast about it or something. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it all just kind of comes into virtue. It's virtue signaling in a way too, right? Like you're villainizing someone to the point where you don't have to treat them like another human. Yeah. Right. Whether it's J.K. Rowling, whether it's Richard Spencer, and they might be a villain. Like, I don't know Richard Spencer's views. Like, maybe he is a deplorable human being. Yeah. But I still wouldn't punch him in the head. He can speak out against him. He can throw trash at him if he's that bad. But it should be in roughly equal retaliation, right? Like, maybe you don't need to lob direct derogatory insults at J.K. Rowling. Or death threats. Yeah. Maybe you can just criticize her.
Maybe you can just be a civilized member of society. Yeah. And not resort to violence.
Yeah. Or don't punch someone in the head. Yeah. So that's all I really had on this. I was the one that proposed this topic of the podcast last minute because I was kind of hearing about the Hogwarts thing, and I think it's the hypocrisy, I guess, of everything.
I heard about it. I heard about the controversy, but like maybe all the gaming media I follow on YouTube doesn't give a shit because like all the gamers I follow on YouTube have been talking about this game endlessly.
The biggest person I follow on YouTube is Colin Moriarty, who only brings it up because he worked with people on that side. Right. He used to be on that side.
But who what gaming outlets do you know that are actually making a really big deal about this?
Kind of funny, yeah.
Other than kind of funny, they're on even Kotaku
and Polygon,
really?
Oh, wow. They both said they won't review it or something like that. Yeah.
Oh my god.
But I think Kotaku is the one that's kind of known to be a little more radical left in their views, I guess. Or something.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. But I don't know. I just thought it was interesting, and it was an interesting conversation and kind of timely. It was a good reason to have this kind of inevitable podcast topic at some point, right? So I thought having it surround this like echo chamber of video game media and kind of like what the worst of, in my mind anyway, what the worst of virtue signaling and boycotting can kind of show up as. Yeah. Yeah. So, I think that's kind of it for me, unless you have any other comments. Do we have any decisions here? Do you think that the reaction to this Harry Potter game is overstated?
Do
you think that this negative reaction to it is overstated? Like, it shouldn't be this intense.
Yeah, I mean, again, people can say whatever they want. Yeah. I think it's like, I don't agree with making such a big deal out of it. Yeah. I don't think it's... I don't know. I think that the reasons, from what I can tell, the reasons people are making such a big deal about it are hypocritical to an extent. Yeah. And just radical. I don't know, man.
I think that's where my line is if it's hypocritical, and that's kind of the crux of the issue, right? Is like you guys are doing the exact same thing that you're speaking out against.
I mean, it's not that I don't...
it's not that I don't support people talking about it. Like, at the end of the day, I do think, like, if you have a passionate opinion about some political issue, make it
Voice
heard.
it. Yeah.
Right? Like, that, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on.
But you also need to be able to back up that position in a conversation. And not just say you're on the wrong side of history.
Yeah.
Period,
oh, for sure.
Close the program, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you have that passionate of an opinion, you better be able to back it up. You better have a reason for it, I think.
Yeah.
Like
if you want to be...
Yeah.
If you want people to take you seriously.
If you want a mild opinion and have no reason for it, I couldn't care less. But if you have a passionate opinion about something, you better be able to sit down and have a long-form discussion like this about the topic.
With someone you disagree with.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Right?
Yeah,
It's
totally.
just like...
Yeah. Which these people won't do.
So completely incapable.
Colin has approached several games media people, and I don't remember if it was exactly about the Hogwarts Legacy thing or about people's opinions of him. I can't remember exactly what it is. But he's like, I will pay you $1,000 to come onto my podcast unedited and have a conversation with me and discuss and debate what your issue is.
Yeah.
And people will ignore him or just say, like, screw you, man. I don't want anything to do with you. And just insult him. Just, like, literally insult him. And he's like, I literally offered to have... I want to know why you guys hate me, right? Like, and I'm willing to pay you. Like, if you hate me that much, come destroy me in public. Destroy me in a podcast.
Right.
If you have real reason for it, but you don't have real reason for it. You guys just hate something because it's this hive mind collection of, like, emotions and feelings.
Yeah, it's like you said it was an echo chamber, which is literally what it is. Like, you have your opinions that you're passionate about, but they've never been challenged by anyone because even the idea of having your opinions be challenged by someone is so, like, you're just not able to you're not able to contend with it.
But in reality, like, iron sharpens iron, right? Like, having conversation changes things. And, like, having conversations like this, like I think this podcast does, it crafts your own. It might even change your own opinion on things. You might change your own opinion. You might strengthen your argument on something. You might realize an error in how you were thinking. You might be able to actually change someone else's opinion on something. But you don't solve issues by standing on opposite ends of the field yelling insults at each other. You solve it by walking and meeting at the center line and talking and discussing about what to do, right? Like, I don't know why I try to make a sports metaphor horrible. No, we don't try to say, right? You can't just stand on opposite ends of the street yelling at each other. That's not how parlay worked back in the day, right? You set up a tent and you sat down and you discussed, right? You like, I don't know. I had a conversation with a friend about this the other day about pro-choice and pro-life, right? And, like, I'm pro-life, and I would be okay with quite a few restrictions on abortion. We don't need to rehash this whole conversation about this. People listen to, but the idea being, I would never go trying to get all those restrictions enacted right now because that's you can't have that conversation right now. You have to start with something, right? Like, for my pro-life opinion, it would be, can we just say no to the third? Can we just say you can't do it 2 weeks before giving birth? Whatever. You just start somewhere ridiculous that I think everyone should be able to agree on, and just say, is one potential life being saved better than nothing? Yeah. So can you not start there, right? But instead it's pro-choice yelling from one side, no restrictions, kill them at the womb, kill them like 9 months, but then the other side is saying every restriction, it's illegal even if it's a medical emergency. And it's like both of these, like, I think both sides, the rational sides, if you get rid of the 5% on each end, could say, like, I get your argument. Can we discuss it? I get your opinion, but I disagree. So can we not find some middle ground that's at least a starting point for both of us? Right? And that's, I think, the issue in modern society is you're so used to short form Twitter and everything, and I don't know. Yeah,
I do wonder how prevalent it is now compared to what it was in the past.
True.
Right? Like, there must have always been there's always been radical people who live in echo chambers and who are intolerant of the other side, regardless of what point in history they lived in. But
I think the difference is that now those people have a more public voice. Because it used to be if you were in an echo chamber, you never had an opportunity to speak to people outside of the echo chamber, in a sense. But now that you have Twitter,
or just the internet generally, right?
You'll be heard by people across the aisle that disagree with you now, right? But these people still don't have the crafted argument or the like intellectual capacity, some of them, to be able to form a
Right.
coherent argument or opinion, right? Without you're on the wrong side.
Yeah.
Get to the right side.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know. Are you really going to call all 70 million people that voted for Trump villains?
Right.
Probably not. No rational person would say that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the conversation. We can end it here. I think that's kind of it.
Okay.
That was about an hour and 10.
Hour and 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Cool.
So that's our
Okay.
just podcast on JK
Wasn't even
Rowling.
just virtue signaling.
It was
kind of a culture war.
Yeah,
type
which I
thing,
think's fair. Yeah, we can call it that then. Yeah.
Sure.
So that's it. That's us.
Okay.
And as always, ciao for
for
now.